Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you my December wrap-up. So I ended December with a bit of a fizzle rather than a bang, but thank God 2020 is over. I feel like I'm really starting fresh with my reading this year. The last couple of months were a bit of a struggle. I talked about a lot of that in my November wrap-up, just with like second lockdown and elections and political stress and cat stress and temporary relocation stress and all of the stress in the world. And that did carry over a little bit into December, but I did manage to read 11 books, although a lot of them are very, very short, so don't be too impressed yet. But I ended up rounding out the year, as I mentioned in my reading resolutions video, which I will link above, with 128 books, and 11 of those I read in the month of December. So all in all, it was a pretty good reading year, although very unexpected in a lot of ways. I, as you will see in this video, read a lot of shorter things. That was kind of what kept me going in terms of my reading through the year, and a lot of the goals and achievements that I set for myself in 2019 for the coming year, I didn't necessarily hit. But 2020's over. It's a new year. We're starting fresh, and this is my very last wrap-up of 2020, so let's get started. So the very first thing that I read, or more accurately finished, in December was Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. So this is the sort of very in-depth true crime book surrounding the Manson family murders, as told by Vincent Bugliosi, who was the lead prosecutor who put them all in prison. This was a really good book. I listened to the audio, which I think was the best way for me to consume this. It was a carryover from November. I didn't quite manage to finish it in November, and I ended up listening to, I think, the last like 6 or 8 hours in December, and it was really fantastic. If you're interested in true crime, especially if you're interested in kind of cults and the Manson family, I would highly recommend this, especially the audiobook. It's very in-depth and very detailed. It's absolutely fabulous, but there's a lot of information. I think that's the one downside to this book. There's so much information being thrown at you that I don't think it would be possible for anyone to absorb it all by reading it just once. I think it's one that you'd have to pick up multiple times and reread over and over again. And I'm sure it's one of those books where you will have some new fact stand out to you every time you read it. But I would highly recommend this. It's just fabulous. You know, the Manson family, you know, the sort of murdery horribleness that happened in LA. As someone who really enjoys kind of true crime, especially true crime podcasts and things, it was really good to get a really solid, factual, 100% factual account of what actually happened, and this was great. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I would really highly recommend the audiobook if you are interested in picking this up. The next book that I read, which was another holdover from the month of November, was The Seep by Channa Porter. This is the US version, but Titan Books is releasing a UK version in January. So if you're in the UK, you will be able to get your hands on this very soon. This is a very weird sci-fi novella. If you don't like weird, this is not for you, I think. But if you like really strange and kind of bizarre sci-fi, as I sometimes really tend to do, I think that this is definitely one that you should pick up. This is one that I would kind of compare to Jeff Vandermeer's weird stuff like Annihilation, which is actually perfect because he blurbed the book. His quote is on the front cover, so that's definitely bang on, I think. But basically this book is about the softest alien invasion that has ever happened. There's this sort of being alien creatures called the Seep, who basically come in and take over, and sort of almost through the water supply and almost as like drugs. There are various ways to kind of get into the Seep. But the Seep wants to make humans' lives better. And so we follow a character named Trina, and Trina and her wife are together before the Seep sort of comes into everyone's lives, and this is set after sort of the Seep has kind of really got its hooks into humanity. So you're gonna have to stick with me a little bit here. You're gonna have to roll with this. Basically, Deba, who is Trina's wife, decides because anything is possible through the Seep, she wants to be reborn as a baby and wants to sort of start her life over again and sort of experience what it's like to be a child again. Trina's like, no, that's kind of weird. They have a big argument, they end up splitting, and Deba goes off, and Trina really struggles with this. She becomes an alcoholic. She's not kind of upholding the standards of society now that the Seep is in their lives. She does not like the Seep. She doesn't consent to having this alien species trying to fix her life, basically. And she ends up going on this kind of journey of self-discovery, and it's really good. It is in parts absolutely bizarre. It is in parts very funny, and I really enjoyed it. It's a weird book though, so you really have to kind of roll with it. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I think that this would be a really excellent read for the right reader. The next book that I read in the month of December is a novella that was fabulous. I absolutely loved. And this is one that I have been seeing pop up a lot on BookTube lately, and so I decided to finally pull it off of my Kindle TBR and read it, and I'm so glad that I did. This is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nai Vo. This is a totally gorgeous novella, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the storytelling style, I loved the characters, I loved the story, and I loved everything that was going on between the lines, because this is one of those novellas where the author manages to sort of pack so much into subtext that it could have been a full-length novel if they decided to go ahead and sort of tease all of those things out, but because they're so talented, they managed to fit everything into this teeny tiny story, and it was so good. There are a lot of booktubers who really love this novella. The first one that springs to mind being Tammy, and I think Tammy has a video that is just fully dedicated to this book, maybe more than one, so I will go ahead and link it up above if you want to see some more opinions about this book. But basically it is about a cleric who ends up at this place called Scarlet Lake and meets a woman named Rabbit, an elderly woman who turns out was the handmaiden to the Empress. And through like small, almost like very tiny vignettes that feel almost like they have the kind of feel of a morality tale. They're teaching you something every single time. Rabbit tells the story of her mistress and sort of her life with the royal family, and it's just so incredibly good. I don't want to say too much about this because it's a little story. It's a short novella, I believe. I absolutely devoured it. I flew through it, and it's so good. I've never really read anything quite like it, and I thought it was just fabulous. This is definitely giving me all my best books of 2020 video, spoiler alert, and I have the sequel because this is a duology of novellas called When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, which I am planning on reading very soon. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was just absolutely fabulous, and you should definitely pick it up because the hype is real. Another novella that I read in the month of December, I'm telling you, it was the month of novellas, this is what kept me going for my reading, was Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is an author who I have been wanting to read for a very long time. In fact, I have 3 of his books, and now I have 2 of them on my TBR because I finally read this. So this is a deceptive book. Because it's a novella, I thought that I could just absolutely tear through it and it would be a really quick win, but that is not really the case. This is a really hard novella, and if you are someone who is still, like me, looking to read more about kind of the Black experience, because it's just not something that I have ever experienced since June, this is one I would definitely recommend picking up. It's a really powerful novella, and it is a little bit hard to read at times. So in Riot Baby we follow 2 siblings, and the older is Ella, And she has this thing, this kind of, it's never really stated as such, but it's basically a psychic ability. She can see into the future of her classmates. She can see what's going to happen to them. She can see what they're going to be when they grow up. And this begins to manifest in other ways as well. And she kind of is trying to learn how to control it, and she's trying to not have this affect her family too badly. It really manifests with rage, for example, and it can become incredibly dangerous. So she has a younger brother named Kev, and Kev is born during the LA riots, and they moved to New York shortly afterwards. And Kev really wants to protect his sister because she obviously has this incredible ability, but she can also potentially be really self-destructive with it. So he's trying to look out for her. However, he ends up getting incarcerated in Rikers Island, and Ella has to sort of decide how she's going to use her power. She has the power to wreck cities, this incredible destructive capability, but she also wants to try to protect her brother as well. This is a science fiction novella. It doesn't necessarily feel like it until the end, in terms of kind of the setting and everything. And when we get to that sort of science fiction element, there's this almost like this horrible sense of dread, and it's a really powerful read. I thought this was so incredibly good. I feel like I don't really have the words to effectively talk about how and why this book was incredibly powerful, but for me in particular, as a non-Black person, this was super eye-opening. I would really highly recommend picking this one up. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's just an incredible read. The next book that I read was Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I have never read anything by Rebecca Roanhorse before, and I ended up picking this one up because not only did it look fabulous, but also this was the Space Sirens pick for, I think, November. I didn't end up getting the chance to participate in the live show because I hadn't read this yet. So you won't see me in the live show, but I will go ahead and link it above. I loved this. This was so incredibly good. I just absolutely adored it. I feel like I say this a lot. I don't say this a lot on my channel, but I feel like whenever a book, especially a fantasy book, really feels fresh and original, it's a very special thing for me because I read a ton of fantasy, and as much as I love fantasy, it does tend to get a little bit samey. So when you read something that feels so incredibly wonderfully different, it's a really fabulous thing, and that's what Black Sun gave me, and I thought it was so incredibly good. So in Black Sun, we have characters who are kind of not on different sides of a conflict necessarily, but we have characters who are on sort of different sides of society. And it all sort of ties into this one character named Serapio, and he is a member of the Crow clan in the city of Tolvos, which he has never been to. So, hello, it's Editing Justine here. As I am going through this video, I realized that I said the name of the city in Black Sun wrong every single time, despite the fact that I was literally holding the book in my hands and I could have looked. It's the city of Tova. Tova, not Tovis or Tolfis or whatever the hell I just said. It's Tova. Basically, he is born to be a vessel for the Crow god, and through various horrible ritualistic things that I will give a content warning for later, he is basically destined to bring this god into this world and sort of elevate his people. That's a really simple way of putting this. We have multiple points of view. We have the sea captain who is bringing Serapio to Tolvos, who is the best. She is amazing. She's not quite human. She looks human, but she is essentially a member of a race of people who are basically mermaids. And they are very much not trusted and not liked. They're often hunted for sort of like their finger bones, which are meant to be good luck, which is horrific for someone like her who would preferably like to keep all of her fingers, and she's so sassy and wonderful, and I loved her. We also get the point of view of the Sun Priest in Tolvos, who is sort of overlooking all of these various clans and the struggles for power, and she really wants to sort of bring everyone together in this city. We get so many points of view, and it's so incredibly good. I just love this book so much. There's something about the world in sort of like the freshness of the world and the magic and the characters. And I really, really loved the characters in this. I just thought this was absolutely fabulous. It does feel like it cuts off at a very, very vital point, so I will be very much looking forward to the sequel, but I thought this was another best book of the year. This is why I don't do my best books lists very early. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. So completely changing gears, the next book that I read was Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus. I basically felt like I had been reading so much fantasy, I just needed like a brain break and a little bit of a refresh with something that was very different. I read One of Us is Lying, which is her big book. I don't know if it was her debut or not, but that was like her big book, which is really fun, but I actually preferred this one. I thought this was a much tighter written book. I thought that the sort of crime element of this book was a lot more sophisticated, and I thought that this was just such incredibly good fun. So this book takes place in a town called Echo Ridge. In 1995, there was a girl named Sarah Corcoran, who is a high school senior who was murdered on her way home from the library. And this has kind of haunted the town ever since. 5 years ago, there was a girl named Lacey who was sort of prom queen, a very popular girl, very pretty girl, who was also murdered and sort of dumped at this sort of like tiny small town theme park that was called Murderland, ironically. So in the present day, we have Ellery and her twin brother Ezra. They are the niece and nephew of Sarah, who is the girl who was murdered in 1995, and through various reasons they have to go and spend the summer in Echo Ridge with their grandmother, and the killer of these two girls supposedly is back and is now targeting the homecoming queens for Ellery's year, of course, of which Ellery is one. So it is two incredibly popular girls and Ellery, and it's because she is sort of new in town, she knows that she has been specifically targeted to be one of the sort of runners for homecoming queen because of this person. This was really, really fun. It's kind of convoluted to try to explain. I did my best, but I thought that this was such a fun book. I absolutely tore through it. It was the perfect thing to read sort of on the sofa in the lead up to Christmas, because Christmas and crime, I guess, go hand in hand. But I absolutely adored this. I thought it was so much fun. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read another novella. This is The Survival of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. I read The Murders of Molly Southbourne in November, and I absolutely loved it, and I also loved this one as well. This basically picks up exactly where The Murders of Molly Southbourne leaves off and kind of continues on the story, and I'm pretty sure that this is just a duology, so this is a kind of completed series, and I absolutely loved it. So the first book, The Murders of Molly Southbourne, basically follows a woman who wakes up chained up in a basement. She is imprisoned, she doesn't know how it happened, she doesn't know what's going on, and this woman named Molly comes in and basically starts telling her her life story. So Molly, whenever she bleeds, basically a clone of herself sort of pops up from the blood and the organic material, whatever her blood lands on, and immediately tries to kill her. You can imagine, especially as a child, because this is a kind of condition from birth, as a child, running around, scraping knees, bumping into things, you bleed quite a lot. And then as a young woman, especially with, say, menstruation, you bleed quite a lot as well. So Molly has been battling these clones for her entire life, and it's sort of the story of her life and how she's kind of dealt with this absolutely bizarre situation that she has. And it was so good. I absolutely loved it. I thought that the concept was amazing. I thought that the execution was fabulous. These books are so good. They are super violent, and obviously there is some blood in them, so if that's not your jam, maybe go in with caution. But if you haven't picked up these novellas and you are interested in sort of this concept, I would highly recommend them. I think that they were just so good. So I don't want to say too much about this second novella, but I thought it was incredibly satisfying. It digs into some of the sort of weirder concepts of this concept, and we get a little bit more background on what's going on. I thought it was so good. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read 3 graphic novels. I read volumes 3, 4, and 5 in the Lumberjanes series by Noelle Stevenson. I am not typically much of a graphic novel reader, not for any reason other than I usually can't get into the story as much as I can something quite a lot longer. So when I have enjoyed graphic novels, they've been quite a bit chunkier than these guys. But there's something about the Lumberjanes that I just find it so incredibly charming and silly and wonderful and fun. So basically, this series follows a group of friends who, for the most part, met at this summer camp. It's basically like a Girl Scout sleepaway summer camp. And they come back every year, and it turns out that it is not quite a normal, basically Girl Scout summer camp. The woods around the camp are filled with monsters, ancient deities, creatures of myth and legend, gods, all sorts of fun things. And these girls are constantly getting into trouble, along with their counselor, Jen, who is like a woman after my own heart. She just wants everyone to be normal and like get their badges and stay out of trouble, and they love her so much, but like they can't. They keep dragging her into things. These are so sweet and they're so funny and they're so charming. I think they're charming is the go-to word here. And they're just fun. Like, they're so ridiculous. Like, okay, so we have Molly, who's my fave, wears this like coonskin cap. That is not a coonskin cap. That is a raccoon named Bubbles, who is very proficient in ballroom dancing. Like, they are ridiculous. At one point in, I think the 3rd one, 2 of the characters end up slipping into a portal to another world and have to help a elderly shape-shifting bear woman who they see around the woods around the camp find her spectacles because a tiny dinosaur stole them and is like wearing them around this like lost land before time. They are so silly. And they were exactly what I needed. I binged all of these in one night. So if you're looking for something that is very silly, sort of appropriate for all ages, I would highly, highly recommend these. I gave the 3rd one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I gave the 4th one 4 out of 5 stars. And I gave the 5th one, which has mermaids, which is just like the best thing ever, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really, really adore these, and I'm definitely going to continue reading this series. And last but not least, I rounded out the year in the absolute best way possible with like the book that is the perfect antidote to 2020. It was so good. I read The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is her new book that is coming out in February of 2021, and it is the last book in her Wayfarer series, unfortunately, but she has such a good send-off for the series and it was so fabulous. I am going to do a full review for this book closer to the publication date in February, so I'm not going to say a huge amount about this now, but this book is like pure Becky Chambers. It's everything that I would have wanted. I feel like you know exactly what you're getting with a Becky Chambers book, and she delivered with this one very much. If you enjoy her Wayfarer series, you're gonna love this. You will not be disappointed with the ending. I just thought it was so good. It's just warm and lovely, and I love the characters. The characters are so good. As per usual, there's no humans involved, and oh, it was just so incredibly good. So basically, this book takes place on a planet that's basically a lifeless rock in the middle of space, and it's sort of been a very unimportant place until fairly recently. As we know from the first book, we have wormholes in this particular world that allow people to travel very quickly across the galaxy, and this planet almost becomes like a galactic rest stop. So we have people who are building businesses on this planet, like sort of places to refuel, to get snacks, to like stay overnight as you're waiting for your opportunity to go off to your next destination, because people are scheduled into slots to go into these wormholes, because otherwise people would crash and everything would be terrible. So in this book we focus on a place called the 5 Hop 1 Stop. I think I have that right. I always get that wrong, and it's basically almost like a little bed and breakfast type place. It's a one-stop for everything that you could possibly need to refuel, to resupply, to rest, to do whatever you need. And it's run by this woman and her child, and they have 3 ships that are arriving on the day that this book begins. They all arrive, and then disaster strikes. No one can take off or land, and there are no communications. So everyone is basically grounded. And we have people from various species, some well-known, some lesser known, and everyone basically has to sort of hang out for however many days it's going to take for everything to get fixed and for them to be able to leave. And it's so good. It made me cry, which is not terribly unexpected because I cry at everything, but it does mean that every single Becky Chambers book has made me sob. I cried in the bathtub. It was incredibly cathartic. It was the best way to end 2020. I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's so good. If you love Becky Chambers, it's pure Becky Chambers. You are going to adore it. So that is it for my final wrap-up of 2020. I had a really good time with what I read in December, although I felt like I didn't read enough as per usual. A lot of these were shorter, but they were exactly what my brain needed in our second lockdown, in our mad tier system that we have right now, and my brain was very, very happy by the end of the year in terms of what I read. So I would love to hear from you if any of these books are in your TBR, if you read anything particularly good in the month of December, or if there's anything that you want to shout out. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.